I'm Russian. Why I don't support Putin? This is what we're going to talk about today. Hi, I'm Elena. Welcome to my channel, Enough of Propaganda. As I said, I'm originally from Russia. I was born in USSR, and now I live in Canada for many years. It's actually a very nice day here in British Columbia, Canada, and you can see, a bit windy, so I hope you can hear me very well. And I want to tell you today what it feels like to be from Russia, what it feels like to live in a cult, to live in a country as a cult, because I was born in USSR, and the USSR was basically a cult. It's not just dictatorship, it's not just totalitarian state, it was basically a cult. And what it feels like to lose people you love while they being alive, they just don't want to deal with you, they consider you a traitor and despise you and wish you dead. Some of my relatives, that's how they feel about me. And also what it is like when everything you worked for, everything you lived for many years, for over 30 years of your life, could be just taken away from you and you just lose it all. So I hope it's something interesting, what you can be interested in, and I decided to share it with you because not many people has that kind of experience. Not many people lived in the USSR, in modern day Russia. Well, not right now, but almost 20 years ago. And what it is like to live in a free country, in a democratic country, and travel the world and see how other countries live. So I'll try to tell about it in a bit short version, but let's see how it goes. Basically, what it feels like to be born in USSR. When I was born, I don't know. I was very little, so I can't remember that. But I was born in a big city on the biggest and most famous Russian river, Volga. And now it's 1 million people city. And I don't remember much of that part because my family moved to the Black Sea coast, near Sochi actually, where there was Olympic Games in the past, and lived there for a little bit. And what I remember about that is it was very humid. It was hardly ever snow there. Palm trees growing, and it's hard to imagine. Many people thinking Russia is a cold place, but not everywhere. Russia is a big country. It's the biggest country in the world. That's why the climate is so different from coast to coast, from side to side. And the Black Sea coast has a very mild climate. It's hardly ever snows. I remember one time in my childhood, snow fell and everybody was so happy. We took the sleighs out one time, and by the afternoon, snow was melted and it was gone. But nevertheless, it was a gorgeous place. It just rained a couple months in winter. And other than that, it was pretty decent. You can swim in the Black Sea up to like October, the beginning of October, and the water would be very warm, much warmer than in Canadian lakes. If you know Celsius, it would be plus 20 and maybe sometimes plus 22, 23 Celsius, the temperature of the water. And about as much temperature of the outside. And eventually my parents, because we lived in a commune, basically commune flat, commune apartment, which was given to my parents by the government. USSR was built up in a way, like on purpose, that people depended on government for everything. You want an apartment, you have to work for the government, which is the only jobs were government jobs, and you have to be good about it and be a good worker, and the government give you an apartment. And depends on the jobs, like certain jobs, like sometimes an engineer with engineering degree has to work as a regular worker, like the one who painting walls, for example, in the construction, because with this job you can get apartment. And it was very humid climate. I remember we were putting laundry outside, kind of just like in Europe sometimes when there is a line and there is around wheels which you can drag it across the street. And it was drying take a long time to dry because it was very humid. That's why Russians were joking that everything is kind of blooming here, even your boots under your bed, which is the word blooming they use. There is the word in Russian which means not necessarily just blooming, but also getting moldy and stuff like that. So after that, and we were living in that apartment which was 14 square meters. One apartment was 14 square meters, another one 16 square meters. What it means commune flat? It means that you have only one room for 3 people, me and my parents, and you have common corridor and common kitchen, which you would have only your own table and a stove, gas stove or electric stove, depends on the apartment. And in the same commune apartment would be 2 or 3 other rooms where they live in 2 or 3 other families, and each of them would have their own table and their own stove in the common kitchen. So when you're cooking or having breakfast or lunch or dinner, you kind of will be, if you wanted to have it on the kitchen, you will have to be with the other families. And those people are completely not related to you, and you will have to live with 3, maybe 4, sometimes more, different families in your commune flat, which you're not related to, which maybe not have a good relationship with. Some of them may be drunk and making scandals all the time and problems, but this is how you live. And you have a common toilet, which some people had their own toilet seat, and my apartment didn't even have a bath or a shower. So you have to either have a sponge bath during the week, but on the weekend you go into the public bathhouse. This is how it was look like. Meanwhile, my parents was standing in line for many years to get bigger apartment because they have a child now, me. And they didn't like it, so they decided to go to Siberia to build a railroad there. And it was promoted in Soviet Union that Baikal-Amur mainline, the railroad they built in Siberia to attract young people to go and take part in the construction. That's why my parents moved there for about 2 decades, basically. And meanwhile, they were standing in line to get bigger apartment, which eventually they did, in the same city on the Black Sea coast. So this is how it was look like. At first, when the construction in Siberia started, there was no railroad, there was no even roads. So my father went there first. And only after that, me and my mother could come a year later, and we had to fly there by helicopter, which is not like helicopter for 2 people or anything, not like private helicopter, but a real big military helicopter. And that's how we ended up in Siberia. Eventually, the railroad was built, and before that, roads for the cars, highways were built. And I would say the level of freedom in Siberia was way bigger than in every other parts of the USSR, because this is Siberia. People were joking there that even if we commit some sort of a crime, we wouldn't be sent more further than Siberia anyway. So that's why people felt more free, and I had more free thinking people as a teachers and so on, and kind of developed a bit my critical thinking, because otherwise, since the day you was born, you were exposed to the massive propaganda, which non-stop. It could be in newspapers, it could be in radio, and eventually people started to have TVs. It was there, but the most part, like everywhere, you're walking on the street and you will see the signs across the road, like banners and so on, saying that USSR is the guarantor of peace. And even at the time, we were completely brainwashed in kindergarten, in school, just exactly what Putin is doing now to Russia. By brainwashing children, they trying to teach them that we are surrounded by enemies and we have to defend ourselves and all that stuff. What it feels like when you're living kind of like in a cult, it's like, imagine if you're living in some sort of a palace, in one throne room in the palace, with the curtains completely closed all the time. It's kind of dark in there, so you don't see that the golden paint already getting chipped off or anything. You can't really see it very well. and you're told that it's a most glorious, most beautiful palace, and you kind of started to learn to see it that way, that it's look enormous, it's look beautiful, it looks the best, and you were told that you are living in the best palace in the world. And just to have that palace, you never look in the window because there are enemies behind that window and they wanted to get you. That's about what you could feel. Also, after that, maybe during perestroika or somebody else came to power, they said it's okay to look in the window. People at first time afraid to look in the window, but then they do, and then they look outside, and it's not scary, it's not stormy out there, it's beautiful sunny day, just like right now, and you can see it for yourself. And worse, you can open that window, you can completely open it and feel the fresh air and the blue sky and everything. This is what happens to you when you coming out of it, and you understand that the outside world is not scary, it's beautiful, it's friendly, and it's not gonna get you. And this is what happened during perestroika when President Gorbachev, by the way, I remember Brezhnev times. Before talking about Gorbachev, I wanted to say a couple words about Brezhnev, which was considered good times in the USSR, when people were relatively okay. Yeah, they had to stay in line for everything, but they know if you stay in line for a year or two or some time, you can buy a washing machine. Washing machine wasn't wasn't available for Soviet people, but I mean, you can buy a refrigerator or a TV or something like that, but you have to collect money and pay ahead and stay in line. If you go and you work in Siberia, like my parents did, you could stay in line for a lot of years, for several years, and you can buy a car, which wasn't available for regular Soviet people. I mean, even if you do have money, you can't really buy certain goods because they're not available to you. That is why in Soviet Union there was a word not to buy, but to obtain. Even books considered big treasures in Russia, in the USSR, and to obtain the good books, beside, like, if you come to the bookstore, you would see the work of Lenin and Marx and all the communist leaders and so on, but you can't really buy Agatha Christie or some other books just openly because everybody wants them and they disappeared really quickly. So you have to stay in line, or you have to be buddies with the owner of the, or with the, not owner, the owner of the bookstore would be the government. The person who is a director of the bookstore, who would tell you, Ivan, tomorrow new books are coming, so you can come and buy the books. So for Soviet people, it was considered amazing when you come to somebody's house and you have amazing books on the shelves. It was considered sign of wealth, sign of intelligence, sign of, well, to being well off. And since then, I treasure books and I love my books, and I'm writing books myself. It's probably why, because it's considered the essence of human knowledge, and so on. But the problem with the Soviet education, which was actually quite good about math and physics and stuff like that, but plus to it, you get a whole bunch of propaganda, which you literally have a political information classes, which would be once a week for sure, and sometimes more often, which you will be told how the rest of the world is living, and how bad they're living, and how wonderful living you are, how wonderful you are living, to compare them. And other stuff like that, that, oh yeah, it's unemployment everywhere, but in USSR there is no unemployment, we're all so great and wonderful, and so on. At the same time, you have the Young Communist League organizations, which from, I don't know, the lowest grades, you become, I have the whole video about that, Октябренок, like October child, like a Lenin's grandchild, basically. Then you become a pioneer, then you become a Komsomol member, and maybe later you will become a party member, Communist Party member. And this is how it works. This is how it worked in the USSR. So Putin, by doing that type of stuff and brainwashing Russian children now, he didn't invent anything. He just using what USSR already had. And that is why it's so hard to re-brainwash basically Russians, to let them understand and see the world in a different way, because they have created their picture of the world in their head. And this picture is very narrow and straightforward, explaining difficult things very simple, and to be able to get through that wall of propaganda, it's really hard. That is why I can't even do it to members of my own family, some of them. They just simply say that USSR was great and how dare you to criticize of the USSR and so on. That is why it's so scary and so awful to see. So now, with Putin taking away all the rights and with Putin sending to jail everybody who criticized him for decades, I can't even go to Russia. I can't take money from my account. I can't sell my apartment there because I'm gonna get arrested. So basically everything I worked for is gone. Like, I can't use it anymore. But this is not the point. To me, I care about Russians as a people. There are lots of good people in Russia. And even more I care about Ukrainians, which they're getting killed and murdered by Russians, and by Putin making Russia as a fascist state. It's like Nazi Germany, and he using Nazi Germany propaganda and propaganda of the USSR. This is what I'm standing up against. This is why I'm fighting it, because I don't want Russian children grow up in that kind of cult anymore. I never did. I never choose for myself to grow up that way. And I don't want their future was taken away from them, like my future was taken away from me until the perestroika and Gorbachev. I couldn't go to foreign countries pretty much. I couldn't live the way I want. And neither was everybody else. Everybody else has certain career plan which was pre-made for you. And your job was to work by the government, for the government. And if you little bit disobey, you're going to be a pariah. And this is at best. At worst, some of Russian dissidents were thrown into the psychiatric wards, where the health people were treated with high level of psychiatric medicine, which used on the sick people, mentally ill people. And just because, how dare you to criticize Soviet Union, because if you criticize, you must be crazy, you must be insane. And lots of other things. So I hope what I said, at least a little bit, give you a glimpse of what it is like, what it was like to be, and why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm doing it not just for myself, I'm doing it for other Russian people and for my family as well. I hope someday they would understand why I'm doing it. That Putin is the enemy of Russia number one. He making Russia into Nazi fascist country and making Russians a pariah of the world for decades to come. And I believe and I know that all the dictatorship regimes fall at some point in time. I hope that will happen sooner. I hope Russian people will wake up and get rid of Putin any way they possibly can. And hope for the better future for Russia and for the rest of the world, of course, and first of all for Ukraine. Because Ukraine completely innocent in this war, as I proved on my channel many times. And that is why I support in Ukraine. And glory to Ukraine. And I wish them win and completely remove Russians from their territory. At least this would be the first step, which would be beneficial for Russian people, because for them it would be a chance to get rid of Putin and get finally decent life for themselves. Thank you for watching and have a great day.